David's phone vibrated at exactly 10:12 p.m. The message was short, only 3 words, but it made his chest tighten instantly. I want to meet. It was from Mr. Kofi, the man who had quietly funded his entire business. For 2 years, that man had been the invisible force behind David's success. Now he wanted dinner, not just with David's wife. David stared at the message for a long moment, rereading it as if it might change. It didn't. His sponsor had never asked to meet anyone from his personal life before. In the world of city business deals, relationships were usually transactional, quiet, and carefully separated from family. But this message blurred that line. Behind the polished suits, luxury car, and expensive office space David now owned, there was a truth very few people knew. His rapid success hadn't been built alone. Mr. Kofi had stepped in 2 years earlier, when David was nothing more than a determined dreamer with a startup idea and empty pockets. Back then, David spent his days moving between coffee shops and shared workspaces, pitching ideas to investors who smiled politely before rejecting him. The city was full of ambition, but ambition alone rarely paid rent. Every day he watched other entrepreneurs succeed while his own plans stayed stuck in spreadsheets and presentations. Then, Mr. Kofi appeared almost unexpectedly, a quiet, wealthy investor with a reputation for backing unusual talent. Their meeting had been simple. Mr. Kofi listened to David's pitch, asked only a few questions, and then leaned back in his chair. "I like ambitious people," he said calmly. A week later, the funding arrived. Everything changed quickly after that. David suddenly had an office in a glass tower downtown, a sleek company car, and employees who believed in his vision. The city began to treat him differently. Doors opened, people listened. Around that same time, he met Maya. Maya was confident, sharp, and effortlessly stylish, the kind of woman who could walk into any room and instantly feel like she belonged there. But what drew her to David wasn't the appearance of wealth, it was the way he spoke about building something meaningful. His ambition fascinated her. Their relationship grew quickly. Late-night dinners turned into long conversations about life, goals, and the pressure of building something real in a city obsessed with appearances. Within a year, they were married in a beautiful rooftop ceremony, surrounded by skyline lights and friends who believed they were witnessing the start of a perfect modern love story. There was just one problem. Maya believed David had built everything himself, and David never corrected that assumption. It wasn't exactly a lie. He worked hard, he ran the company, he made the decisions, but the foundation beneath it all, the money that made everything possible, belonged to someone else. Now that someone else wanted to meet his wife. The next evening arrived with a strange sense of tension. Maya stood in front of their bedroom mirror wearing a red dress that made her look effortlessly elegant. She adjusted her earrings and smiled at David. "You look nervous," she said playfully, "like someone just doubled your rent." David forced a small laugh and tightened his tie, just to work stress. She accepted the answer casually, but David's mind was racing. What exactly did Mr. Kofi want from this dinner? The restaurant they arrived at was one of the most exclusive in the city. Glass walls overlooked endless towers of glowing lights, and the quiet atmosphere carried the subtle confidence of wealth, the kind of place where people discuss deals that quietly change lives. Mr. Kofi was already seated when they arrived. He looked exactly as David remembered, calm, composed, and observant, the kind of man who seemed to watch everything carefully before speaking. Maya greeted him warmly, extending her hand with a friendly smile. "I've heard so much about you," she said politely. I almost choked on his drink hearing that sentence. Had she really heard anything? Not from him. Mr. Kofi studied her quietly for a moment before smiling. "David is lucky," he said slowly. "Not many men build success and find loyalty." Maya laughed softly. "He works very hard." David felt the words land heavily in the air between them. Mr. Coffee leaned back in his chair, swirling the drink in his glass. Then he asked a simple question. Do you know how your husband built his company so quickly? Maya glanced at David. Something in his silence felt slightly off. Investors, David said quickly. Mr. Coffee chuckled under his breath. Yes, investors. Dinner continued for a few minutes with polite conversation, but the atmosphere had shifted. Everyone at the table could feel it. Then Mr. Coffee said something unexpected. Marriage in this city is interesting, he said thoughtfully. People rarely know who truly supports their lifestyle. Maya lowered her fork slowly and looked at David. For the first time that evening, curiosity replaced her relaxed smile. Mr. Coffee leaned forward slightly. Relax, he said calmly to David. I didn't invite her here to embarrass you. David felt a brief wave of relief. I invited her, he continued, because smart partners should understand the reality behind success. Maya folded her arms lightly and asked calmly, maybe someone should explain what that reality is. The restaurant noise seemed to fade around them. Mr. Coffee turned to Maya kindly. Your husband is talented, he said, but talent usually needs backing. Maya nodded slowly as the idea clicked into place. So you're the backing. David waited for anger or disappointment. Instead, Maya's expression became thoughtful. She turned to Mr. Coffee again. And what exactly do you get in return? Mr. Coffee smiled. Mostly honesty. Then he added quietly, something David has been struggling with. Maya looked at David again, this time with disappointment rather than anger. You could have told me, she said gently. Marriage isn't a performance. David finally spoke honestly. I wanted to look like the man you deserved. Maya shook her head slowly. I married the man, she said, not the illusion. Mr. Coffee watched the exchange carefully, almost like someone observing a test unfold. Then he nodded approvingly. Good, he said, because illusions collapse quickly in this city. Maya looked at him again. So why did you really want to meet me? Mr. Coffee smiled. Because strong businesses need strong families. David blinked in surprise. That wasn't the answer he expected. Mr. Coffee continued calmly. Men who hide important truths from their partners rarely build stable companies. Secrets eventually destroy both. Maya nodded thoughtfully. She appreciated the honesty, even if it came from someone outside their marriage. Mr. Coffee then asked one final question. Maya, do you trust this man? The table fell silent. Trust was always harder to answer than love. Maya looked carefully at David, studying his face. Not searching for perfection, but searching for honesty. After a moment, she smiled slightly. I trust the man who just admitted the truth. David felt something inside him relax instantly. Respect slowly returned to the space between them. Mr. Coffee raised his glass with his small approving nod. Good answer. Then he added a final lesson. Money can build companies, but honesty builds stability. Later that night, David and Maya drove home through the glowing city streets. Neon lights reflected across the windshield as traffic flowed quietly around them. After a long moment of silence, Maya spoke softly. Next time, she said, let me be part of the truth from the beginning. David nodded. For the first time in months, he felt lighter. Because in a city where appearances often matter more than reality, honesty had become the rarest luxury of all. And maybe that was the real reason the sponsor wanted to meet his wife. Not to control David's life, but to see whether the foundation beneath his success was strong enough to survive the truth.